Hello and welcome back to the Salesforce Hulk channel with on day 6 of lockdown learning. I first of all want to apologize to all of you for not being available for some days. There was something related to this COVID-19 thing happened, and so basically what actually happened was where my house is near to that there's a hotel, and that hotel is owned by my father. And so we got a notice from the government that it will be converted into an isolation center or something like that. So because of that, I had to leave this lockdown learning in between and had to go for some days to our farmhouse, because of course we cannot stay near to the place that's going to be an isolation center, or that's going to be a quarantine center, right? So that's what the case is. But now I am back at home. It's not happening anymore. So that was the case. I sincerely apologize for not being available. I hope you understand the situation that I was in, and I had to stop this lockdown learning. But now again we are back, and this time it's gonna be better from the past. And today we'll start with Apex triggers, another very important topic when it comes to Salesforce development that we're going to talk about today. This is a very complex topic for some of the people, or in fact for most of the people, and it's a very important one as well. So, and yeah, it's a lengthy one. There are a lot of things that you need to take care of while working with Apex triggers in Salesforce development. So we're going to cover them. We're going to try to cover them all up. So it might continue for tomorrow as well, because I want to give my best to you guys so that you can understand this concept very well. So meanwhile, let's see how many people are there. Say hi to me on the chat if you're back. I really want to see. Are you excited for this session today, or if you have any queries for me or anything before we begin with Apex triggers? Saw no messages yet. Looks like no one's live. Are you guys live? Unable to connect chat. Give me a second. Oh. Okay, now I got it. So yeah, hi. There's so many people. Okay. So there are okay. So there are so many messages that I was not able to read earlier. Let me see. Hi Madhvi. How to call class from trigger? We're gonna cover that up. Anyone from Bangalore? Hi all. Hi. Yes, Hulk bro waiting here. Hey. Hi from Pune. Hi. Swarnika. Hey. Swarnika. Is everything alright? Yeah, everything good, man. Good to see you again. Thanks, man. Same here. Ok, deles mesmo esta nessa parte mesmo agora estamos vende Visual Force. So I do not understand what language and which language this is, but what I can understand is when you're gonna teach Visual Force. Is that correct, Rodrigo? Hey SFL, happy to see you again. Thanks, man. Hi. Hey, hello, hi Sudhanshu. Hey Suresh. Hey Karthik. Hey Harshita. Um, hey Rahul. Hey Satya. Hey, hi, excited to learn. Waiting from last 4 to 5 days. Yes, I'm so sorry for that. Excited. Hi, Shrey, excited. Please focus on before and after more. It's a bit confusing. No problem. Hi from Hyderabad. Hi, yes from Bangalore. Bangalore. Stop reading messages and start session, bro. Cool, man. As you say, I'll follow whatever you say. Cool. Let's come back. So, let's talk about Apex triggers. Let's understand what Apex triggers exactly are. So Apex trigger is nothing but a stored procedure, that means procedure, or you can call it as stored procedure or a code which gets executed whenever like there is a DML operation happening, or like it can happen before the DML operation is happening, or it can execute, or this code can execute before the DML operation is happening, or it can execute after the DML operation as well. So imagine this is the database. I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible for all of you. I'm not going to dig deep into the concepts or the technicalities initially, but yeah, try to cover up try to cover it up as easy as possible. So yeah, that's what the case is. Now let's say if there is a record that you're trying to create, update, delete, undelete, and whatever, any DML operation whichever is getting performed onto that particular record. So if like before, so there are again two types of triggers. I'm jumping onto the next part of it, which is types of triggers. Number one is before, and number two is after, right? So over here a DML operation happens, and this DML operation can be anything: insert, update, delete, or whatever you say. So this simply means whenever a user takes an action, and due to that a record gets created, or let's say updated, deleted, or undeleted, anything, so you have the capability to execute a particular code before the DML operation happens as well as after the DML operation happens. Let me explain it to you once again. So like let's say, let's take an example of cooking, because in this lockdown yeah, let's take an example of cooking, because nowadays we're cooking a lot. So imagine you want to make a curry, or let's say, yeah, you want to make a curry, and there are some procedures that you want to make before making the curry. Like you want to chop the vegetables, right? So you're gonna execute the code to chop the vegetables before it gets inserted into the curry, or before you prepare the curry, or before you create the curry. And after the curry gets created, what you want to do is you want to garnish it. So the things that you want to do after the curry gets created can be considered as after triggers. So this can be considered as the things that you want to do before the actual procedure, the actual DML operation that is happening, and the things that you want to do or that you want to execute after the DML operation is done. So this is the difference between before trigger and after trigger, right? So these are two, like basic two types of triggers which are there, and trigger is again nothing, a code or a stored procedure which gets executed before as well as after a DML operation. That's all what it is. I hope you're clear with this. I just want to make sure that you understood it really well, so that we can move on. When to use trigger and when to use class, I'm going to talk about that. Yes, please. Trigger handler, trigger helper. I'm going to come to that, Raj, but not today. Probably tomorrow. Context variables. I'm going to come to that. Okay. So now let's come back to this. Now the time is to understand when exactly do we need to use triggers. So here are some points that I've written down. If you can see that, that'll be very beneficial. So here are some points, right? Here are some points. An Apex trigger is a stored procedure that is called whenever record is inserted, updated, deleted, or undeleted. If any change happens to a single or multiple records, and guys, you have to like consider this part. Let's make this bold. If this happens to a single record or to multiple records at once, so if you're updating multiple records at once, the trigger will be fired at that moment as well. If you're editing or updating or creating a single record at that moment as well, the trigger will be fired. So that's what's gonna happen. Now let me explain you some situations in which like we execute triggers. So if we want to update a field before the record gets inserted into the database, so in that case we can create a trigger. Again, by saying this, I do not mean that that's the only means by which we can do it, but there are some situations in which we want to fetch the data from some other object or some, like, yeah, there is some kind of situation in which we need to do that. So in that case we can fire a trigger or we can write a trigger. Let's say if there is something that you want to do after a record has been deleted. So once the record gets deleted, you want to delete other records as well which are there in any other object and that you're not able to do with any point and click tool. So that for that you can just write down a trigger. So again, if you want to execute something even after a record is restored back from recycle bin, that's another situation in which you can write the triggers. And over here is the most important point that you need to understand before even thinking about learning Apex triggers. And I'm very, very serious about this. Guys, listen to me very carefully. If something is possible using the point and click tools in Salesforce, by point and click tools, I mean workflows, approval process, process builder, flows. If any such thing that you are trying to do is possible with the help of these tools, please, 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 please do not go for triggers or do not go and write down the triggers. Not at all. You do not need to create triggers for the things which you can do with the help of point and click tools. And with the help of process builder, a lot of things that we were not able to do earlier with the help of point and click tools are now possible. So there are like less chances of you to go and create Apex triggers or to go and write Apex triggers. But be very, very particular about this, that if something can happen with the help of a process builder or a flow or let's say your workflows or approval process or anything, you do not need to write a trigger for that. Only write the trigger in the case when you do not only write the trigger in the case when you do not have any other option, like if you are not able to do that particular thing with the help of point and click tools. So that's what this particular line means, right? I hope this is clear. And triggers are active by default. Whenever you create triggers, they get activated. So that's what the case is. Now, without wasting any further time, I'll just go and jump into the syntax of it. Will you upload video after this session? Yes, Chirag, I'll upload a video after this session for sure. Okay, so there is a question that is coming up again and again: when to use trigger and when to use a class. So it's very simple. Krishna, I guess Krishna is the one who asked this question. Let me explain it to you. So here is a class which contains code, and here's a trigger which also contains code. So the execution of the code which is written inside the class will only happen when you will initiate it, right? So like the execution of the code which is written into a class or into a class's method will only happen when there is some operation that you're doing, and because of that like the class's code gets executed. Otherwise the code which is written into the class will never get executed. But when it comes to triggers, what happens is whenever you're trying to perform a DML operation, whichever trigger is there on that particular object gets fired automatically. And by automatically I mean, like if you are just creating a record the code which is written inside a trigger will get fired automatically or will get executed automatically if that trigger is active on that particular object. Like let's say if there is a trigger that we have created onto account object, and if we are creating a record of account, then in that case that particular trigger will automatically get fired, or the code which is written inside that particular trigger will automatically get executed. So that's what is the major difference between a class and a trigger. I hope you got that. When to use flows plus process builders? There's another question. And when to use triggers? So flows and process builders are the ones that you need to go for initially, and if you're not able to perform a certain task with the help of them, go for triggers. Can you give some scenario when we should use Apex? It's simple. Like let's say if you are trying to create a record of a particular object, and there is a custom object in which you need to there are, like, let's say 3 custom objects in which you need to create records, and based on the records that you created, you need to query for another records, and based on those records you need to update a field onto the same record on which the trigger got fired, or on which the DML operation happened. So in situations like this, you're gonna write a trigger. And I'm going to come to different situations for different context variables and everything. Please give me some time. Can we allow visitors to perform tasks that provides to them without using external identity user profile? I think this question is not at all related to this, so let's skip it for a while. Please tell us about merge triggers as well. Okay, we'll come to that. Let's move forward. We're still on to the basics. I hope you got this. Now, without wasting any further time, I should just go directly to the syntax of like how to write a trigger, right? So this basic syntax of writing a trigger is like similarly like classes use like the triggers start with trigger keyword. So trigger is like trigger keyword is something that you write down when you write down a trigger, and if it is a class, you write down it like the class. So that's what the difference is, and after that you just write down the name. So in classes you just write down class and the name. That's it. That's all what you do. But when it comes to triggers, you have to write down on object name, and that's compulsory. Let me tell you why. So if there is a code that you're writing, which is what we are calling as trigger, and it gets executed on a DML operation, right? This get executed on a like on a DML operation. Then on which object's DML operation it gets executed? Like if we are creating an account record, then it will get executed, or if we are creating a contact record, then it will get executed. So every trigger is associated with a particular object, and it can be there onto a single object only, right? It cannot be there onto multiple objects. You cannot have a trigger written down for 2 objects, though you can copy that same code and create 2 different triggers for 2 different objects, or you can create a class, and inside that class you can just write down that code which you want to execute and just call that method from both of the triggers of different objects. But you cannot like at all create a trigger for 2 objects, right? So this on object name is very compulsory, and when it comes to object name, you need to write down account if you're trying to create a trigger onto account object. If you're trying to create a trigger on contact object, you just need to write down contact. If you're trying to create a trigger on custom object, like let's say student underscore C, so this underscore C is the API name. Again, you have to write down the API name of the what you have to write down the API name of the object on which you're trying to create the trigger. So that's what the case is. Now we have got parentheses, right? And inside these parentheses we need to write down trigger events. I'm going to talk about trigger events in a while. Like just after this, I'm going to talk about what trigger events are, but this is also compulsory. This basically defines like on which DML operation and at what time of that DML operation you want to execute this particular code. Listen to it very carefully once again. On which particular DML operation and at what time you want to execute the code which is written inside these curly braces, which is what we are calling as a code block. So whatever code you want to execute while you're creating triggers, you can just write it down in here. That's how you need to do. Right? It's simple. Hope that makes sense. Okay, makes sense. Now let's move on to trigger events. Trigger events. To explain it to you, I'll again repeat the same thing that I did just now. On which DML operation you want to fire or you want to execute the code which is written into this trigger, and at what time you want to execute this particular trigger. So let me explain it to you over here, sir. So if a record oh, so if a record is getting created, right? So before insert basically means, so this is the first type of trigger event, right? So before insert basically means that you want to execute this code whenever a new record of that particular object gets created, and that too before it gets created into the database. So that's what you need to do. You need to execute it before it gets to the database, right? So that's what the case is. So for that you can just write down before insert over there. That's what you can do. When it comes to before update, it's simple. You do not want to execute this particular code when the record is getting created, but you want to update or you want to execute this code, or you want this code to be executed when the record which is already in existence is getting updated. So then only you want this record to be or this code to be executed. So that's that's again one of the benefits of having triggers or writing triggers. Let me explain you how. Like, I mean, you cannot figure out or you can actually, but it's easier to understand, or it's easier to figure out that if the record is getting created initially or if the record is getting updated. I wish you guys can see me now. Are you guys able to hear me? Just let me know in the chat as soon as possible. I don't know. Looks like there is some I don't know what. There's something happening to our classes, right? Power cut in Jaipur. There's no power cut, man. There was an issue with my internet. Power cut. But glad to know that you know that I'm in Jaipur. You can hear me? Yes, perfect. Let's begin it once again. Welcome back. Thank you. Okay. So let's talk about trigger events again. Yes. You can hear me. Let's start. So I was explaining you that before triggers gets executed, before the DML operation that happens into the database, right? That's what the case is with before triggers. But when it comes to after triggers, let's talk about them one by one. So when you talk about after insert, so whenever you want to execute a particular set of code or set of statements after the record gets created into the database, then in that case you can simply use this after insert trigger. So let me give you an example to make you understand that. Like, let's say if you want to create so whenever like an account record gets created, you want to create a record, or let's say whenever an opportunity record gets created, you want to create a record for commission, right? And that's a custom object. And but like, and that should be related to account object as well. So in this case, you can use after insert trigger, and again, I think this can be done with the help of process builder as well. But yeah, in similar situations, you can just write down after insert trigger, in which whenever there is something that is happening into the database, like a record is getting inserted, and after that you want to like execute a particular code. And let me tell you why you need to write down that code after that record gets inserted into the database, because you want to access the record ID or the like created by time or last modified time or last modified date. So in these situations you need to create the trigger as after one, right? So that's what you need to do. And similarly, when it happens, when it comes to after update, can you give example of trigger from? Okay, I'm gonna come to that, Shrishti. I just want to know like if the quality of the video is apt, as well as the voice audio is echo free and completely fine. Vasu Salesforce. How can I get your previous recorded live session? So Vasu, it's very simple. It's all posted onto my YouTube channel. Just go over there and you'll get it. Everyone can hear me? There's only Sabah, I think, who can hear me. All clear. Perfect. 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 Loud and clear. Cool. So what I was telling you was that if you want to execute some code after update operation, then you can just write down after update. And if you want to write down some code after the delete operation, you can just write it down like that. And after undelete, if you want to execute something, then you can just write it down like that. So that's what the case is. Now let me explain you how you need to write down, or how you actually need to write down the trigger events. So trigger events over here, you can just write down like this: after, or let's start with before insert. So you're creating a trigger on account object named as your first trigger, let's say, and you want to execute this code whenever a new record of account gets inserted. This code will get executed whenever a new account record is created. So in this situation, this code will be executed whenever a new account record gets created. Now if you want the same trigger to execute onto you want the same code to be executed even if the record is getting updated, then in that situation you can just add a comma, if you can see, comma, and then just write down before update. Right? So if you add another trigger event which is before update, you can just separate it with the help of a comma. Now in this situation, this code will get executed whenever a new account record is created as well as updated. Right? That's what's going to happen. I hope you're getting what I'm trying to explain. Okay, that's a good question by Asta. Yeah, why there is no before delete? Because there is no such situation, or there is no such thing that you can do before deleting something. Like what you would want to do, or there is no such scenario in which you want to do something before undelete. Or undeleting is simple. It's just putting your records back from recycle bin to the actual list view where you see the records, right? And it's just a flag that gets modified. So if there is a record that gets deleted and the associated records with it also gets deleted because there was a code that we have written down to do that, and you want that if that record gets undeleted, all the associated records should also get undeleted, then in that situation that will only happen after undelete, because the record ID and everything will be required, and record ID will any which way will be there, but until unless the main record or the parent record is not there into the like is not out from the recycle bin, the associated child records will definitely not get out from the recycle bin. So that's the reason there is no before undelete. I hope you got it. Okay, so here is a simple example. In this example, you can see I've written down trigger, then apex trigger 1. That's the name of the trigger. You can just name it like anything, but it's better to write down a name which makes sense to you, so that you can understand by the name what is the purpose of creating this particular trigger. And then you need to write down the API name of the object on which you want to create it, and then after that you can just write down the trigger events inside the parenthesis, right? That's what you need to do. Then again, yeah, this is something new, and for this there's a topic that I'll be explaining you, and the topic is, okay, let me just write it down like that. Context variables, right? So this is a context variable, and I'm going to explain you what exactly a context variable is, but let's wait for a while. Let's first see what this is doing. So let's say there are there's a record, right? Let's consider this as a record, right? This record is getting updated, and when this record is getting updated, this is before update, then it will first go and fire the trigger or execute apex trigger 1, and this is again a count record, right? This is a count record. This is a count record, and whenever it gets updated, it will first execute the apex trigger 1, because apex trigger 1 is again a before trigger, or the trigger event which is mentioned over there is a before update, and then after that the record will get updated into the database, right? That's what's going to happen. So in this situation, the reference to this particular record is stored into this context variable, which is called as trigger.new. Let's understand it once again. There is an account record which you are trying to update, and whenever this record will get updated, the apex trigger 1 will get executed, and inside this apex trigger 1, if you want to access the record, like if you want to access what are the field values that are there in this particular account record, then you'll be able to access it with the help of a context variable, and that context variable in this situation is going to be trigger.new, right? That's what's going to happen. And let me explain you what is the significance of trigger.new. So trigger.new is basically returns the list of records. Listen to me very, very carefully. Trigger.new basically returns the list of records on which the DML operation is happening, because of which the trigger got executed, right? So listen to me once again, or let's see this. Let's just understand it with the help of a diagram. So let's say there was one record that you were trying to update. Then in that case, inside trigger.new will be having this one record, and with the help of trigger.new we'll be able to access the records on which the DML operation is happening. So that's what the significance of this trigger.new is. Now let's say there are 5 records that you are updating at the same time. let's say there is a Visualforce page or there's a Lightning page that you have created. With the help of that, you are updating 5 records at once. So in that case, this trigger.new is going to have a list which will have all those 5 records: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if you want to access the first one, it will be on 0 index. If you want to access the second one, it will be on 1, next one 2, next one 3, and next one 4. So if you want to access the first record, what are you going to write down? You're just going to write down trigger.new. You're just going to write down trigger.new, and after that, inside square brackets, you're just going to write down 0. And if you want to access the second record, you can just change it to 1. If you want to access the third record, you can just change it to 2, and yeah, so on and so forth. So that's how you can do it. But in situations like where there is only one record which is getting created, updated, or whatever the DML operation that is happening to that particular record, in that case, this list only contains a single record, and this single record is of course on the index 0. So you just need to write down 0 in here. That's how you need to do it. Oh, that's how you need to do it. I hope you got it. Yeah, let's move further. So now let's understand what exactly I'm trying to do. What exactly I'm trying to do in this particular code. Right? So this is the definition of the trigger, which includes the name of the trigger, on which object you want to fire it, and before update, it should just change the name of the company or the account that we're not the company, but the account that we're trying to create, and add just limited at the end of it. That's all what needs to be done. So this is very simple. This code, what it will do is, if you'll try to update a record, let's say there is a record syntaxa. So the name of the record is syntaxa. Then in that case, if I'll update that record, then it will add limited after it automatically. So the name will get converted to syntaxa limited with the help of the trigger, with the help of the code which is written in this particular trigger. That's what the case is. So let's just do it. So let's create a record. The name is just syntaxa. I just want to check first of all again. Okay, so listen to this once again. Whenever an account record or whenever you create a trigger on a particular object, whenever you create a particular trigger or a trigger on a particular object, it is by default active. I might have turned this trigger as inactive, and let me tell you how to make it active or inactive. You just need to go to setup. I'm just verifying that whether this Apex trigger 1 is active or not onto account object. That's all what I'm doing. So when you're going to create your first trigger, it'll not be necessary. Apex triggers. See, Apex trigger 1 is inactive. I've intentionally made it inactive, right? Because there are a lot of triggers that I've created, and I do not want all of them to get executed every time that I do some DML operation onto that particular record. So I'm just gonna check this checkbox in here is active one, and I'm just gonna save this. Now let's just go and create a record called as syntaxa. Nothing else. and I've entered no other value. The account's name is Syntaxa. There's no doubt into it. Now I'm just gonna edit this particular record. So while I created this record, there was nothing that happened. Why? Because the event which was written over here was before update. If it would have been before insert, then in that case, this wouldn't have happened. Like it would have executed at that moment, right? It would have executed at that particular moment itself. So that's what the case is. Now I'm just gonna change, let's say, the city to Jaipur, whatever I want to do, and then I'm gonna save it. So see, the name of the account is changed to Syntaxa Limited. If you're gonna see over here as well, it's Syntaxa Limited. That means the code that you wrote down in this Apex Trigger 1 got executed, and it got executed successfully. That's what happened. I think that's like all what I want to cover up today. I need one more day to cover up Apex triggers. So tomorrow also I'll be continuing with the same topic, Apex triggers, and I'm gonna go in depth with into Apex triggers. But I hope I was able to explain you Apex trigger basics, what exactly an Apex trigger is, what are different types of it, when to write it, and how to write it. And this is the basic way you can write it. And if you just want to, like, if you just want that this should happen even when the record is getting inserted, then you can just write down before insert trigger event with a, like, separating the two trigger events by a comma. That's all what you can do. So I think I was able to help you out for the basic explanation of the trigger thing. And yeah, and I don't know what's happening to us. There's a lot of trouble that's going on with the internet and everything. So yeah, now we are running short of time. Please let your questions come in so that we can move forward. I need to know how to create time-based trigger. Time-based trigger is what? Like, you wanna schedule a trigger? What? Please come tomorrow for sure. I'll make sure that I'll be there, Ashwini, tomorrow. I want to come. Like, I mean, I feel like there is something missing in my day if I'm not interacting to you guys. It's very painful for me as well to not to not be connected to you. I really want to be connected with each one of you all the time. That's what the feel is, and I'll make sure that I'll be there whenever you guys need me. So thanks man. I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, where we can get the answers for earlier challenges. We are not going to post the answers. I think the answers are already posted into the comments, so you can just check that out. Check the one of the one which won. I think Shreya was the one who won it at the last time. And again, yeah, let's talk about the Junior Hulk challenge. So we're gonna post the Badge Apex and Governor Limits challenge today. We haven't posted the link yet for the last video that I created for day 5. Today is day 6. So the day 5 challenge will be the link for the day 5 challenge will be posted soon. So just make sure that you're the next Junior Hulk that we get. Thanks. Thanks. Thank you. Today's challenge, you're gonna get it by tomorrow. Just breathe. So happy to see you excited for the challenge. Thanks. Session was going interesting. I know, Raj, but I don't think that I should extend it for more than this time. But we'll do it tomorrow. I'll make sure that you understand triggers very well. Rest soup after triggers. Okay, we'll talk about that tomorrow. But let's complete triggers first. Thanks. Okay, chalo. Now stay safe. Stay at home. Make sure you are in isolation, and not isolation, but yeah, you're quarantined at your home and you're staying safe. See you tomorrow. Bye.